last week. Most of you realize that as Beth and I took a little time and we're down in Ocean City. Was that last week? You're looking at me a little. Yeah, it was last week. Whew. Yeah, I'm still on vacation in case you haven't noticed. Yeah, I'm still not all together. Vacation didn't help, so I'm trying to get it together. But we had a really nice time. We had really, really nice weather. It was a great time with Beth's parents and her brother and sister. I should say brother and sister-in-law. So anyway, coming to the Word. I'm going to jump right into it. We are looking at Psalm 27 this morning. It's a Psalm of David. And normally what we should always try to understand the background of these Psalms. There's 150 of them. And of course, David didn't write all of them. There were other writers, Asaph and so on. But Psalm 27 is attributed to David, and we should know what's going on as to why the psalm was written. There are a few things in here that might give us some suggestions as to what was transpiring in David's life. As we look at the rest of Scripture in David's life, we can determine about when this was happening. But I'm going to be honest with you. This is a psalm that we can't be assured of as to what the circumstances were that caused David to pen this. But as we look at it, beyond a shadow of a doubt, what we're going to see is David's prayer life. All right? We're going to see some of David's intimacy with the Lord in Psalm 27 with the statements that he makes. And so let's go ahead and let's turn to that psalm. And what I'll do then, we'll take and we'll read it together. We'll look at it together. I'll read it. And then what we'll do is we'll sort of break it down, and we'll see how it applies then to you and me. Psalm 27, 14 verses in it. David starts out as he writes this, "The Lord," or Yahweh, "is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Yahweh is the defense of my life. Whom shall I dread? When evildoers came upon me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and my enemies, they stumbled and fell. And though a host encamp against me, my heart will not fear. Though war arise against me, in spite of this, I shall be confident. One thing I have asked from the Lord, and that I shall seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to meditate in his temple. For in the day of trouble, he will conceal me in his tabernacle. In the secret place of his tent, he will hide me. He will lift me up on a rock. And now my head will be lifted up above my enemies around me, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing, yes, I will sing praises to the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice, and be gracious to me and answer me. And when you said, seek my face, my heart said to you, your face, O Lord, I shall seek. Do not hide your face from me, and do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my help, and do not abandon me, nor forsake me, O God, my salvation. For my father and mother have forsaken me, but the Lord will take me up. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me in a level path because of my foes. Do not deliver me over to the desire of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, and such as breathe out violence. I would have despaired unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for Yahweh. Be strong, and let your heart take courage. Yes, wait for Yahweh. David, in writing this psalm, starts out, and in verses 1 through 3, what we see is his confidence in the Lord. And we got to understand David's life and what he experienced and what he was going through. It's nothing like your life of ease and my life of ease, okay? Nothing. So when he states here, the Lord is my light and my salvation, he's saying that the Lord is his guidance as far as light is concerned. The Lord is the one who is showing him what to do. The Lord is the one who is giving him wisdom. And when he uses the word salvation, that we have translated salvation here, he's saying, now listen, the Lord is my deliverance. First and foremost, the Lord, Yahweh. This is the covenant God with Israel. And you just can't read it in English and you go, okay, I've read it. No, we're talking the Lord. This is the creator of the heavens and the earth. This is an infinite being who spoke everything into existence out of nothing. This is the one who is writing the story of your life and of my life. This is the one who has given life to every human being there is. He is the author of life. This being has no beginning and he has no end. This being is omnipotent. He is all-powerful and holds everything together. This is the being who created all the angels, the righteous and the unrighteous angels. This is a being that when he speaks, it's done. Now, David has been with this Creator from his youth. He has known him intimately since he was real young and taking care of sheep out on the hillside. How would you like to go way up into the woods by yourself, away from everybody, and you got to sleep outside night after night after night with all the sheep? Yeah, oh yeah, easily 10, 12 years old. He's doing that. Okay? He's not afraid of the dark, okay? Matter of fact, the Lord will enable David to kill the bear and the lions that would attack the sheep. And David would kill them with his sling as a young kid. He would even grab a hold of them and slit their throat with a knife that he had on his side. Can you imagine killing a lion that way? All right, yeah, we're going, okay, now this is David. He's got a lot of older brothers, okay? Matter of fact, he's brother number 8 or number 7. Which is he? David. Out of the line of the boys. He's the youngest. He's got 7 brothers, yeah, because he's number 8 as far as the boys are concerned. But David sat underneath the stars night after night, talking to the Lord in intimacy, looking up at the heavens. Let me ask you. Now, the Israelites did this every night. They got on their roofs in the coolness of the night, and that's when they enjoyed the evening on their roof and looking up at the stars, and finally it's cooling down there in Israel. So when was the last time you sat on your roof and looked up at the stars? We're in a completely different culture. We're in a completely different time. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, but I call it the boob tube. But that boob tube isn't drawing you into the Lord's presence to worship Him and to be in awe of Him and His majesty and His glory, right? But I guarantee you, if you stare up at the heavens and you see the meteors and you see the unbelievable expanse and you begin to understand all the constellations and how God has put it all together, it draws you to Him in His magnificence, in worship and in awe. What is man that thou art mindful of him, or the son of man that thou would visit him? David writes. God, we are just a speck of dust on this planet compared to the vast universe. Not even a speck of dust. And so right away, we are not going to get through this psalm. It's not going to happen. Because the first word, the Lord, is extremely important. How awesome He is. He is my light, David says. And he doesn't say it from a head knowledge. He says it from an experiential knowledge. He's experienced Yahweh in unbelievable ways. Guess what, Joe? David could run like you, and he could leap over walls unbelievably. You know, what do they call that, parkour, where those guys do those flips and everything, you know, and it won't be long you'll be back doing that, Joe. All right? That was David. But he realized where his abilities came from to be able to do that parkour and all that leaping over walls and killing bears and lions as a very, very young man. He realized it was all coming from the Lord and his intimacy with the Lord. And he says, the Lord is my light. He is the one who is guiding my steps as I protect the sheep every night from wolves, from thieves, and from everything else imaginable. The Lord is the one who is guiding me as to where I take my Father's flocks of sheep and lead them into green pastures, beside the quiet waters. Psalm 23. Excuse me. Thank you. I caught myself. And then he says, the Lord is my salvation. The Lord is my defense against my enemies. I believe that David is possibly writing this, and I say possibly, when he is running from Saul, King Saul, who was trying to kill him because Saul knew that he was going to be heir of the throne. Saul wanted David dead. Saul would chase David there in Israel for a minimum of 15 years. David would be running from the armies of Israel and from Saul. That's a long time to hide out in caves and in the woods and in strongholds. That's a long time to be a fugitive. And believe me, Scripture records that some of his escapes from Saul and his army were extremely close. But the Lord was there, being his salvation, his defense. So with as great as the Lord is, he says, whom shall I fear? Well, when you're following the Lord, you have no one to fear, including our corrupt government and including anybody who may be coming after your life. Whom shall I fear? And the Lord is the defense of my life. So whom shall I dread? Because there is not a warrior around like Yahweh. The one that David writes about in Psalm 139, that the light and the darkness are the same to the Creator. He looks right through the darkness, and it's as though it was day. He sees all the plots of the evil enemy against David. He knows all the wild animals that are after David and his sheep. There isn't anything that escapes the Creator's notice. He never takes his eye off of you and your circumstances and your situations. Never. He's right there. He knows what's coming today. He knows what's going to happen when you get behind the wheel this morning to pull out of here. You might not know. You might think you know. But you might be in for a surprise. Whom shall I dread? When evildoers came upon me to devour my flesh, and this is poetic, so they've come to kill me. My adversaries, my enemies, they stumble and they fell. In other words, they didn't succeed. And the Lord made it sure that his enemies didn't succeed. Now, I'm going to stretch you. If you haven't read the Old Testament in a while, and particularly in the Kings with Saul chasing David, there comes a point where they're at the Dead Sea, down south of Jerusalem. And there's a lot of caves down there. En Gedi is the area that it's called. The Qumran caves are there. And David and 600 of his men are hiding inside of a cave while Saul and his army had gotten word that he was down there, and so they are looking for him. Remember the story? Saul, of all places, and there's hundreds of caves down there in the mountain region, and of all caves, God takes and leads Saul right into the cave where David and the 600 men are hiding. Now, these are massive caves. It's pretty cool. And so what transpires is Saul goes to relieve himself, and David's soldiers are saying, David, now's your chance. The Lord's delivered him into your hand. Take his life. Snuff him out. And David says, God forbid that I should raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. The Lord will take care of him in his time. But David crawled up to Saul without him knowing and cuts off a corner of his royal robe, sticks it in his pocket, crawls back away. Saul finished relieving himself. He would have really relieved himself had he known David was right behind him. Okay? Saul leaves, and then David comes out of the cave. And Saul's down below in the ravine, and he hollers down to King Saul, King Saul. David, and Saul goes, is that you, David? David says, sure is. This is the corner of your robe. The Lord led you right into the cave where I was, and I could have easily taken your life. And I want you to realize, I am no threat to you, King Saul. I could have easily put you to death, and I did not. That's not my intent. I will never lift my hand against the king's anointed. So you talk about a defense. You talk about enemies stumbling and falling before David. He experienced it over and over again in his battle with the Philistines and the Amorites and so on and so forth, on whom the Lord allowed him to put hundreds and thousands of his enemies to death. Man, when you're surrounded by guys trying to kill you, and David's able to use the sword and put him to death, he goes in the Psalms, Lord, you're the one who trained my hands and my arms for warfare. You did. There's no way I could fight off that many enemies. But there are times where the Lord would step in and he would take care of David's enemies, and David would never even lift a hand against them. They stumbled and they fell. And he says, though a host encamp against me, my heart will not fear. And though war arise against me, in spite of this, I shall be absolutely confident. There's only one way David could be that confident. Notice, it's not about David's self-righteousness. It's not about any righteousness in this text about David. All his confidence is in how great the Lord is. How awesome this Creator is, who is intimately involved in every detail of his life, who will never take his eye off of David, and he'll never take his eye off of you. And that this incredible Creator is in control of all the circumstances of your life. Every last one of them. Do you believe that? If you don't believe that, you're going to fear. You're going to be afraid. You won't have boldness. You won't have confidence. David states here, and this is a true thing, thousands came against David. Armies came against David. And that would have been a perfect time for David to say, it's over. I am scared to death. And you know what's amazing? Is every time, because David kept his eyes on the Lord was his light. The Lord gave him wisdom in every situation and circumstance. You ready for this one, Doug? David finds himself in Philistine territory because of Saul trying to take his life. The Philistines are the bitter enemies of David and of Israel. Any chance the Philistines get, they put an Israelite to death. But David is right there in the midst of all the Philistines, down by Gath. So, here's what happens. Some of the Philistines catch him. And they bring David to the king of the Philistines. And of course, the king would have put David to death because David by this time had put many of the Philistines to death. And so, do you recall how the Lord was his light and what the Lord had David do while he was there before the Philistines, before the king? Yeah, Norm's laughing. Yeah, I like that story. It's what I do oftentimes with my wife. I start drooling, and I start acting like I'm crazy. And that's what David did. And the king said, don't you think, what is wrong with you guys? I am so busy, and you bring this madman in front of me. And that's what he calls him. He calls him a madman. He says, get this madman out of here. He's no threat to me or anybody else. Get him out. So the Lord led David to act like he was crazy, like he was mad. And he got right out of that situation where he was completely encompassed by the enemy that wanted him dead. And the king made a decree that he was to be left alone and thrown out. And so, of course, David hightailed it out of there once he had his freedom. The war rise against me. In spite of this, I shall be confident. Good, we still got a few minutes. Then he goes on to state, now listen, this is the key to my confidence. This is the key for the Lord taking and giving me wisdom and giving me guidance in all my circumstances and all my situations. And literally in every decision of life, the Lord wants to guide you. If you lean on your own understanding, you're going to be in big trouble. If you lean like David leans, you can't go wrong no matter what happens. And here we go. One thing, just one thing, David says, one thing and one thing only I have asked from Yahweh. And that I will seek, and that is exactly what I always seek. That I may dwell, that I may live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of Yahweh and to meditate in his temple. That's the key. That's the key to confidence. That's the key for protection. That's the key for spiritually prospering. It's the key to storing up treasures in heaven. Right there. The one thing. Notice who he asked. Notice that David didn't do it himself. He didn't lift himself up by his bootstraps. He didn't say, I'm going to do this. He comes to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords and the Creator of all, this infinite being who is involved with every cell in your body, everything that's going on in your mind. He's right there. He's seeing it. And David says to him, it's you I'm turning to, this infinite, unbelievable Creator. And I ask, and it's what I seek, it's what I come after, and it's that I may dwell with you. The house of the Lord, I may dwell in the very presence of the Creator. Notice he doesn't say that I can just come in quick, open up the door to the Creator's house and talk to him. He says that I may dwell, that I may live there. Constant. That I may come into his presence all the days of my life. He is not talking about the temple. The temple's not even built. And he's certainly not talking about the tabernacle, and that's located in Shiloh. It's not even in Jerusalem at this time. He's talking about the very presence of the Creator. And he says, Lord, I'm asking you that you will enable me to live in your presence and trust the reality of your presence all the days, every day of my life. Wow. You want to succeed in life? You want to be storing up treasures in heaven? This is what you ask the Lord. This is the infinite Creator who can give you infinite wisdom, infinite guidance in every decision you need to make. No wonder David was so successful. Did he sin against the Lord? Yes, he did. Did the Lord restore him and forgive him? Yes, he did. David wasn't perfect. And thank God we have those passages that show that he wasn't perfect. He was like you and me. And the Lord gives the opportunity for all of us to ask him, Lord, Beth knows this, the prayer of my life has always been, Lord, you keep the chain really short on me, because I am prone to wander, and you keep that dog chain nice and tight so I can only go so far, and that's it. Because listen, I know myself, and I know what I'm capable of, and my brother-in-law will tell you it's some pretty ugly stuff. And so I say, Lord, keep that chain short. Let me walk in your presence. Now notice what it's to do. It's every day of my life to behold the beauty of Yahweh. Now I'm going to tell you the real meaning of the Hebrew word here. Most translations give it beauty. I'm going to give it the word gracefulness. It's grace overflowing. To behold this Creator who is a creator of unbelievable grace. You know what grace is? Undeserved help, undeserved merit, undeserved everything. So it's to see the gracefulness of Yahweh. It's to look at his attributes. It's to look at how marvelous he is, that he is a God who lavishes so much help upon you and me when we humble ourselves and when we turn to him and when we focus our eyes on him and we talk to him and depend upon him and trust him. He pours it on you and me. It's overflowing. He loves you infinitely, and he wants so much to bless you. You know who's holding back the blessings? Yeah. You can't point the finger at anybody except yourself. And unfortunately, many times it's right in between the ears where you're holding back the blessing because you don't believe that he loves you infinitely. You don't believe that he's a God of unbelievable grace and wants to lavish you with tremendous help. Now listen, he's involved in your life every second. And so we were down there in the boardwalk, Ocean City, Maryland. And my nephew was proposing to his girlfriend, and it was a secret to her. And that's why the family was all there. It was well organized. It was pretty cool. Because have any of you been there in Ocean City, Maryland, where the pier goes way out into the water? It's a long pier. And on that pier going out to the end of it is chain link fence on the sides of the railing. And all the lovers through the years have put in locks on that chain link fence. They put their names on the locks and they lock them on that chain link fence, signifying that their love is locked, that their love together is locked forever on that fence. Well, my nephew, Drew, was proposing to his girlfriend, Jada. How many of you heard the name Jada before? I'd never heard it before. Jada. So how do you spell that? J-A. She said, you can spell it different ways, but I spell it J-A-D-A. I said, okay. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to look for a lock with your name on it. And so as we walk the unbelievable long walk, I want you to keep in mind that there's 17,000 plus locks. 17,000 plus locks on this chain link fence. And I said, Lord, help me to find her name. And so we're looking along. I said, there's one's close, Jaden. There's another one over here, JC. Chances of finding Jada on this fence are going to be pretty slim, written on that lock. You know, the lovers put their names on them. When we get up to the end of the pier, I looked over at a lock, and it was nice and shiny, and it was new. And there was nothing written on it. And I smiled to the Lord. I said, oh, that's too bad. When this couple took that lock and put their name on it, when they put it on the chain link fence, their names were to the back, and so you can't see their names. Keep in mind, I hadn't touched any locks. And the Lord said to me, go take that lock and turn it around. When I did, turn that lock around, there it was. Jada, 2023. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, Lord. That is so cool. So I called her over and I said, guess what? I found your lock. Here it is. It's got your name on it. And your name only. There was no other guy's name on that lock. And so I said to Drew, I said, hey, Drew, I said, you got a magic marker? I said, why don't you put your name underneath Jada? And I said, it'll be Jada and Drew. Because that's what most lovers do. They put both, of course, they put their both names on it. And Jada goes, you're not going to steal somebody else's lock. What I found very interesting is after the proposal and everything, I showed Jada's mother the lock. And when I turned that lock around and she looked at the lock, the mother was extremely puzzled. And she's looking at it, and she goes, why did my daughter put another lock on here? Because Drew and her had a lock with their names on it and had already put it on the fence. She goes, why did my daughter put another lock with only her name on it? I said, what do you mean? She said, well, this is my daughter's penmanship. This looks exactly like my daughter's writing on that lock. And it wasn't. Now, I share that story with you because we went on that evening to experience the Lord in marvelous ways with individuals from Kazakhstan and Russia. And some very things that I had been seeking the Lord for. To behold the graciousness of Yahweh. Did he have to do all that with that simple lock? Part of that was a reassurance that he was the one who was bringing Drew and her together. Oh, the proposal, really, really cool. Really amazing. Really honoring to the Lord. I wish you could have been there. I wish you could have heard it. But the question is that the one thing that you seek? Is what driving your life to experience the Lord and His incredible grace in your life? If you're living for the things of this earth, for physical things and for vacations and whatever, okay, it's going to end up being ringing hollow. It will never bring you fulfillment. It will never bring you lasting joy. Only seeking the Creator and His grace will bring you fulfillment of life and lasting joy. Amen? Yeah, you know it. Yeah, we all run after the stupid material things and pleasure and so on and so forth. And you know what? You know, if that's the center of it, it ends up being a zero. You just go, okay, what's the next thing that I can run after? Because that didn't do it. Now, to behold the gracefulness of Yahweh and to meditate in His temple. Now, how's the idea? Make sure I got the right word in the text. No. Temple. The word meditate carries the idea to contemplate. So it's not just meditate, you can just go over and over and over, but it's a contemplative meditation in that you're truly thinking deeply and how this affects your life. What this tells you about the Creator. So this contemplative meditation in His temple, in His presence, where you are dwelling, where you are seated, where you are enjoying Him and He's enjoying you, what you're doing is you're saying, how does He apply to my life? What does His attribute have to do with my life? How does this change me? How does this work in the circumstance that I'm currently in? It's contemplative. And so when you come before the Lord and you focus on Him and you talk to Him to behold His gracefulness, you're also contemplative meditating. I know why, for the first time in my life, in one evening, that the Lord brought a Russian and 2 Kazakhstanis to talk to me. And it was crazy. You go, why, Mark? Because I've asked the Lord over and over for the opportunity to talk to some Kazakhstanis and a certain Russian. And in 1 hour, He fulfilled all that. And I had the time of my life in a restaurant on a rooftop. The problem is if you don't contemplate, meditate, you aren't going to experience Him. Because guess who controls your thoughts? Guess who that you are coming after, that you are seeking, that you are asking Him to behold His gracefulness. You're asking Him to work powerfully in your life. You're asking Him that you can experience Him and the reality of Him. And guess what He does? Oh, He says, fantastic. That's exactly why I created you. That's exactly what I want you to do. I want you to experience me. And then He says, hold on, I'm going to blow you away. I'll cause you to grab a hold of one lock out of 17,000 and turn it around to find the name. That's nuts. Hadn't I listened to the Spirit of God telling me to grab a hold of that lock and turn it around. As a matter of fact, I'll be honest with you, I did. I hesitated. I'm like, Lord, it's not there. That's not going to be on that lock. There's no sense of me even doing it. And a little voice inside my head said, do it. There it is. Obedience. For in the day of trouble, David says he'll conceal me in his tabernacle, in his intimacy of his very being. He will protect you, conceal you, he will hide you. In the secret place, in the hiding place, there it is again, of his tent. He will hide me. Not only will he hide me, but he'll take me and he'll lift me on a rock, a high rock in the Hebrew. This is a rock of security, a place of refuge. In the, notice every word counts. Every word in the scripture counts. It's the day of trouble. I don't think it's a shock to any one of you that there's the day of trouble that the Lord has designed for you, right? He is bringing the day of trouble into your life. And it is His doing. See, He brings the day of trouble right to you so that you will turn to Him and rely on Him, so that you will turn to Him and experience Him. That's what He's designed all your troubles for. You're to count it all joy, James writes, when you fall into various trials, right? You're to count it incredible joy, consider it joy, because in the trouble you are going, as you trust the Lord and as you draw near to Him and as you're in His intimate presence, you are going to be blown away by the Creator. He'll conceal you. Now listen to me. There are plenty days of trouble. And there are more days of trouble coming. There are days of unbelievable trouble coming for you and for me. And there's only going to be one way to keep your mind. There's only going to be one way to overcome the enemy. There is literally going to be only one way to survive. And that's asking the Lord that you may dwell in His intimacy, in His presence. He is the only one that will keep you safe. He is the only one that will keep you secure. Now, if He chooses in that day of trouble to bring you home, that's His prerogative. But I think we forfeit so much because we don't come after Him. And we don't make Him our hiding place. And God says, okay, you don't want to turn to me? You'll bear the trouble yourself. and it won't be too pleasant. David, from the time he was young, came to realize that the Lord was the source of his strength. He come to realize that the Lord was the only one that could protect him from the bear and from the lion. And that the Lord was the only one that could enable him to kill the bear and to kill the lion as a young boy. That the Lord was the only one that could take care of Goliath. David was real. And he faced a real enemy. And he experienced victory after victory after victory because of the one thing that he asked. That he could dwell in the house of the Lord all and every day of his life. I afford you Wednesday nights. We are here. We are here just to pray on Wednesday nights. And the doors are open. You come, stay as long as you want, as late as you want. Leave as early as you want. But I'm telling you, it is a time of connecting with the Creator. It is a time of watching him answer and work. Do you have to be together? No. But I'm telling you, there's a special blessing when you come together. Because you get to encourage one another. You get to talk to one another afterwards. It is so uplifting in that time. We get to bear one another's burdens and fulfill the law of Christ, the love that we're to show to each other. There's a lot that transpires when you're in the presence of the Creator. He infuses you with his power, and he changes you. Every time you're in his presence, he changes you. So he lets that choice up to you. Storm clouds are gathering. The days of trouble, the day of trouble is coming. David was prepared from the time he was little. It was what he practiced, and he was in the Lord's presence, so when the day of trouble came, he just continued right in the Lord's presence, and the Lord carried him through. You can't wait until the day of trouble and then come after the Lord, because you will fall apart in the day of trouble, and you'll be coming before the Lord filled with fear rather than filled with trust. You see the difference? So in the day of peace, now is the day to come after him and to build that intimacy. So when the day of trouble comes, there is no fear, only confidence in what the Creator can and may do in your circumstances and situation. Closing hymn? 496 in closing. 496. We got nowhere through this text. Beth's making it clear you don't have to pray out loud when you come for prayer. We've got individuals who come and they just sit back quietly and they listen to everybody else pray. They're praying in their heart. So don't think you have to pray out loud, no. But you can come and share your burdens and share your prayer requests with us, and we absolutely, of course, lift them to the Lord. It's a marvelous time. There's